off on mute quickly.
Brilliant. So we're live on Facebook. So wow, another big topic, another weekend. Go for it, Sagar. You want to say something? You're on mute.
Yeah, no, we're going live. Actually, I know what Viraj says now. No. I know what Viraj means. We are live now.
Okay, all right. Watch it on the replay and then find out when we're really live. So yeah, another blessed weekend. I think thank you to all the men. We've literally just come out of another amazing deep session, right? We're slightly late for this live, 10 minutes, because the previous session was overrun. So the topic that we're talking about is the women in our lives, and it went super deep, super quick, didn't it, Sagar? So I think for the women listening, I would love for you guys to comment, because obviously the subject's about yourselves. It's about the women in our lives, you know, from a male's perspective, but we'd love to hear your perspective. The reason for the topic, I guess, came about twofold. So Monday, was it 8th? Yeah, 8th of March, it was International Women's Day. So a massive shout out to all the women, and a gentle reminder to all the men: if you haven't got your Mother's Day presents, you better get them now, because you're going to get in trouble tomorrow. So show some much love and appreciation for all the mothers out there as well. So I think where to start. So welcome to, if you're joining us live, wherever you're listening from. So you're tuned into the Mindful Men's Club. If you're new to what we do, we're literally normal guys like yourselves. We've just set up this group because each of us have gone through a journey of mental health in some way, shape, or form, and we've come together to actually, I guess, come together really just to show up for other men in their lives. And our mission is really simple: to ensure that another male does not fall victim to being a statistic to suicide. All right, so that's why we do what we do. Really interesting question. I think when we started the actual talk in the private Zoom with the men earlier on, we literally just asked the question, what does that actually mean? So if you frame the question, the women in our lives, what naturally comes up? So things like all the relationships, obviously, that you have with the women in your life come up. So I think, you know, for me, it was my mother that came up immediately first, my wife, close friends that I've got, female friends, both from a spiritual context, both from, you know, maybe from school or college context, etc. Cousin sisters. I don't have any blood sisters, but I'm really close to a few friends who I treat as sisters as well. And obviously I've got my cousin sisters. So, and it made me think, when you think about the women in our lives, what footprint have they left? Are they still leaving in our lives that positively has influenced us, or negatively influenced us, right? Because there's both sides to every conversation. And do we take them for granted? Do we appreciate them? Do we value how they've shown up in our lives? And then equally, do we show up in their lives and in the way that they need us to? So for example, there was, I won't mention obviously any of the men's names because there were so many deep personal shares. I think there were like quite a few deep personal shares for the first time. And there were conversations around, one guy shared, you know, how he grew up as a young boy watching his mum go through domestic abuse, etc. Right, so that was pretty deep. And then you had another guy sharing about how you know, he was forced into sexual relationships, right, by a woman. Now typically you kind of that kind of connotation of conversation is associated with men, i.e. being in a position of power and doing that, but this was the flip side of the conversation. And then it was another conversation that came about around how, you know, the I don't watch the news, forgive me, but what was it, something popped up, right, about the lady that the lady who got murdered, Saga, recently on the news.
Yeah, recently, yeah. I've got her name, but yes, just recently, literally last week, I think.
Yeah, so you know, and another guy mentioned that immediately when he saw that, he felt when because he's a young niece. I think it was around 6-year-old. I think he mentioned his niece was around 6-year-old, and he felt a sense of protection. Right, you've got to go and do self-defense, and because he does martial arts himself. So I think we're always positive. We're always like positively, negatively influenced by events around us and events from our own lives and how we've been brought up by the women in our lives, and whether it's girlfriends, wives, partnerships, whether you've been through a divorce. Sagar, you shared your story again as well, and then a couple of other, and one guy shared his story for the first time as well about recently being divorced. So it was just a fascinating subject. About we never thought that the conversation was going to go so deep, so quick, in multiple avenues of just deep pockets of uncovering like wow aha moments kind of thing, where people were coming to a realization, or they've shared their journey, have they come out of it, and then we were listening and we were thinking, wow, that's interesting, we could potentially use some of that in our lives as well. And it's just fascinating. And I think if you just take a step back and look at the macro and just ask yourselves that question, it's a really, really powerful question. So if you ask yourself, the women in our lives, and just change it, so like instead of our, say my, so if you ask yourself, the women in my lives, and then what comes to mind, like who are the female figures that come to your mind? It's a really powerful exercise, and obviously that could be personal to each person, right, good or bad, depending what relationships you had. And I think it's just fascinating what we unpacked and what we learned from it, wasn't it, Saga, in terms of
It was.
just so much content. I've got like a page and a half worth of notes here, so I'll let you. I'm still processing it, but I'll let you.
Yeah.
I'll let you comment.
I think we're both processing it.
Mm.
Yeah, I think as just echoing what Manoj said just now, is we, it was supposed to be a topic which is so generic, but as Manoj said earlier, how it's gone into different directions. No sort of, if there was anything that was on a negative side, with a negative energy, it was turned into a positive very quickly. And that's only because of people sharing what they shared on the platform. And the words that came out, was things like compassion, the strength, there was wisdom, growth. And like when I was sharing my story, and which I don't mind sharing on here, because I've shared it a couple of platforms already, but at the moment when you're going through something, and because of male ego, you tend to always want to be right as a man. And sometimes the women in our lives, yes, the care element is there, but they are actually there without you realizing. They actually do create some kind of growth within you. And you only realize that later on in life, unfortunately. Sometimes, it's come to a point where, I'm not saying it's too late, but I think we need to be more aware of that, the women that we do have in our lives. And that doesn't have to be a girlfriend or a wife or a sister. It could be any women in our lives, right? It could be just a friend. And some people come into your life for that reason. And a lot of people complain, or well, that person's lost contact, and but then were you aware what they were actually doing, and what part they were playing in your life? Because you realize that, as I said, you get so, again, that male ego, you get so caught up within your own life that you don't realize that the women that are in our lives, they're actually have played a part in our growth. I'm just trying to get my words out, because I'm just trying to think of
No.
everyone that was I mean, it went crazy. Like, it's supposed to be an hour and a half. I think we went to 1 hour 45 minutes, and we didn't even realize on time.
Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating subject, and it's a deeply self-reflective narrative, right? To ask yourself that question about what the women in our lives, what they mean to us, and each one's going to have a different value system, right? And we even went in the conversation about arranged marriages, right, which was super deep. Wasn't expecting that one, and we've got culturally people from all backgrounds, so it's not all Asian, right? So it's fascinating getting people who are non-Asian saying, oh, wow, I didn't know that this was so deep in your culture, and about arranged marriages. And does it still go on? And to some degree, yes, and to some degree, no, because it depends where you live right now, right? So in London, we're, very cosmopolitan, and relationships are quite cross-cultural. I think, as they should be, right? Each to their own. If you love someone, if you're aligned to someone's core values, then why not have a relationship with them, right? And it doesn't have to be the same skin color. I mean, that's really got nothing to do with it. That's my personal opinion, but others may differ. I'd love to hear your views on the comments. There was another guy who mentioned he's had 2 or 3 bad relationships, and until he broke out of the cycle of asking himself what he wants out of a relationship, and then aligning that to similar core values to his current girlfriend right now. I think what was it, 6-month anniversary, what I call like honeymoon period in a good way. I've been obviously married a long time. I thought that was beautiful to hear that they're aligned both physically, emotionally, spiritually, but that doesn't always happen, and you don't have to have necessarily a list, but you do need to understand who you are, what's important to you, to discover yourself. And then when you do find that person, it's more like they're not, and I guess this is subject to different people's opinions, and it's really personal, but it's not something that is filling a void, because that's coming from a lack of something. It's more a case of, who you are, who your potential partner is, or the traits that you want to have in her or him, depending on which way you're looking at it. And it's more complementing each other, right? One of the guys mentioned that it's more actually complementing each other. So, but the big thing that came about is what all the men learn, actually, and the hands up, me included, and everyone, you, Saga, and everyone, is that we just need to understand where they're coming from, right? And we're not just talking about necessarily a partner or relationship perspective, but we did focus, I think, heavily on that, didn't we? And it's a case of, are we actually listening to them, or are we actually listening to our own voice and our own interpretation and our own male ego? And do we understand when they just want us to just not do anything or not fix anything, but just listen to them? Or do we understand where there's a difference, where they want us to take action, right? And we sometimes misinterpret that. And one of the guys mentioned the book about I haven't read it, I don't know if you've read it, but men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and kind of you can read between the lines about where that is, and there's just a disparity about understanding the opposite sex. But women have egos, obviously, because it's human nature, right? Ego is not bound to sex, right? But typically men normally typically, I'm generalizing a little bit here, typically have more of an ego, right? And certainly that's the discussion that was unpacked in our previous Zoom session. And it's just a case of, you change as well as the relationship evolves. So then people's belief systems can change and you can evolve. And I think you mentioned it, right, Saga? Like, sometimes you're just not the person that you used to be 5 or 10 years ago, and you've changed. And in a relationship, that person may still be that person that was 5 or 10 years ago. So there might be a bit of a misalignment, or they might have changed with you or ahead of you. And I don't mean ahead as in levels, but as in their journey. And it's such a fascinating subject that if you don't check in now and again and ask yourself those really, really tough but important questions about, what is it that I need to do for the women in my lives, right? And it's different if it's a cousin, sister, if it's a niece, obviously, if it's a girlfriend, if it's a wife, if it's a mother, etc. And it's obviously different, right? But I think visually, if you ask yourself that question, it's powerful. And just think about the images of the women that come into your mind, right? Is it the mother? Is it the girlfriend? Is it the wife? Is it the sister? And then go one step deeper and say, are you appreciative of them? Have you taken them for granted? Do you understand them? And it's such a deep subject. I mean, yeah, I can go on and on, but I'll pause there.
I think we can go on. Someone just mentioned ego is universal, not just men. Yeah, no, exactly. That is Sorry, yeah, didn't want me to come across that it's just men. It's only because we're in that whole men's group.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the first
exactly.
thing that just kept repeating itself during the whole conversation was male ego. No, it is universal, definitely. And, you know, I think I mentioned this, that if you have been in a relationship, or if you have a relationship with your sister, or you have a relationship with your mother, whatever it is. And like Manod said, we have to be aware of us first, because I think what happens is we always try and want other people to understand us, and that's not always the case. And the same thing, I'm not saying it's the same thing with women, and I think this is why, that whole one word that kept coming up was that communication side of things, because we can't assume they know. However, you can't change someone, because if you're spiritual but someone, or your partner who is a woman that doesn't understand spirituality, you can't force them to understand it. However, as long as that communication is there and they realize why you're doing it, or why you're doing certain parts, it should be not, I'm not saying it should be left there, and but if some people can't connect on that energy of just
Yeah,
about spirituality or speaking about this, and that's okay. But I think, like someone mentioned, our topic today was only supposed to be the women in our lives, and it went into so many different directions, whether it's to do with parents, as a mother, whether it's to do with, the majority of it was to do with marriages and engagements and divorce, and I think when we sort of dig down deeper into it, uh, we realize that we not tend to change someone, but it's that communication again. And when you sort of communicate, and you then think back to yourself, like I said with my previous relationship, actually I could easily just be hating, which is the easy way out of
mm,
anger. Okay. But or I can actually take a step back, understand why something has happened, but then
mhm,
understand that, like I mentioned, that my business would have not been where it is now if it wasn't for my previous partner,
yeah, yeah,
right? Because she's the one that pushed me, that kept pushing me and saying, you have to do this, you have to do this. Yes, I was very angry and irritated at that time and frustrated, because male ego again came back and said, no, I know my business, I know what's best. However, now actually taking and stripping everything back, if it wasn't for her input, clearly I must have thought I was frustrated, but clearly I paid attention to something,
mm,
because I would have never got to the business where it is now.
yeah.
And so then, yeah, well, the word that comes out is being grateful. I'm so grateful. And then some of the stuff that I never really paid attention to and did not listen, I'm still having problems listening, trust me, even with my partner now. But that doesn't mean I just completely switch it off, because then I look back at something and think, actually, don't go back the same route that
Mm,
I was.
mm,
Yeah, I might have done when she was talking, and I said, just, I know, but then actually I've reflected back on something back in my previous life, and I think, no, 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 I'm going back down that same road. Actually,
yeah,
now reach out and be grateful that what she's saying, or what he said, because there's a meaning behind it. Now, whether you listen to it or you don't, of course, that's your own thing. But we tend to switch it off. Instead of communicating about it, we switch the subject, and that's where it gets very toxic, because we do love the women in our lives, whether it's a sister, mother, girlfriend, in some way, or form, but we tend to switch off subjects that we're not comfortable talking about.
yeah. I think it comes down to everybody. Um, I think it's an innate human quality, right? That everybody connects. Sorry about that. I've got drilling in the background, so if you can hear that, apologies to everyone listening. My neighbour's doing some work, which obviously I can't stop him doing. I think it comes down to every person connects very differently. to another person, and I think that's unique to the individual. And going back to what you said about spirituality, I think just to share a bit more with the audience, the context of the conversation was in relationships in terms of what people are aligned to. So for example, normally in a relationship you have the different layers, right? So you have the physical attraction when you meet someone new. You then have you know, the emotional connection, not in this order. Then you're intellectually, you have a connection, right? Because intellectually you can have a conversation. And then a deeper soul to soul connection is the spiritual one that you mentioned, right? But it doesn't mean that if you don't have those four, that you can't have a good relationship. And if you expect to have all four and program that into your mind and impart that into your partners, that's not always going to happen, right? Because people are different, right? So I think it's just important to make that point as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. I just want to say thank you so much for, we have quite a few people joined. I'm getting some private messages. I don't know about you, Manoj. We knew you're muted, but we knew this
Sorry,
was
I'm not
gonna
checking
happen.
my phone. I never check
Oh,
my
yeah,
phone.
that's
Yes,
cool. We knew this was going to happen. So,
that's okay. We don't have to name anyone, but if they
no,
want
no,
us to
no.
mention anything, we can mention stuff as well. But yeah, I can't see it, so just shout out to whoever's listening. I can't see who's
Yeah.
on our audience.
Well, they're all listening. I don't think people are actually. I just want to say Prina's on. I think Ravi, hello. He said afternoon. Um, and Presh is on as well. So
Cool,
awesome.
cool. Uh,
Yeah, go on, buddy.
No, I was just saying, what was really interesting is another conversation that came up, and I'd love to hear females' perspective as well as males' perspective on this. Is that when you're a guy, and especially in the Asian culture, and I promise I'll talk about this, and this is what the guys in the private chat wanted me to talk about. So I'm keeping my promise here, guys. So when you're a guy in the Asian culture and you've got female friends, but you're in a relationship already, right? It doesn't have to be marriage, just in a relationship already. What if your intention, and I guess it comes down to intention and perception, two different things, right? Intention is coming from a place of inside out. What is your intent? So if you're meeting up with a friend, what is your intention? If you know you're already in a relationship, and then there's the perception of the society and the audience, right, around you, that, oh, that person, Sagar, is meeting up with another girl, but he's already in a relationship, or Manoj is married, but he's already meeting up with another girl. Like kind of like, who cares, right? Because a lot of judgments and expectations. But then if you dissect it, it's like, it's just the Asian culture, right? Especially as well, that people love to gossip, people love to talk. But it comes down to only you know the truth. Like, what is your intention? And the bigger question is, and people might find this bizarre from non-Asian backgrounds, is that sometimes it gets really confusing that you can't even have a relationship with another male who's a friend if you're a female, or a male and a relationship with a female, and if you're in a relationship yourself, and then you might get misjudged or Chinese whispers, right? Thinking, oh, they're together, or I've spotted them doing this or doing that, and things just get so lost in translation. It's unbelievable. So I'm not sure if there's any men out there who have experienced that, or any women out there who've experienced that, but I'd love to hear their perspective on that, because that was a deep conversation as well, wasn't it?
Oh, that was, yeah. I think that when we went into that sort of level, uh, like I was saying earlier, like, you know, in the business I had to implement and have females part of the business now, because when you know, something was wrong, or I had to show some support to a bride, and if I went up onto the stage and showed her support, all have, even though my intention is this is my job and I'm only here to serve them, to the family members are thinking, she's getting married, but why is this guy like in her face? But the intention is complete, you know, for me it's my job. But you're right, it's
The example you gave, I mean, you might want to share the exact example you gave, because it will put it into context about the hair.
Oh yeah. So the example, it was when I do all the weddings, and if the bride's hair is out of place, until now, until recently, I will be the one going up on the mandap to sort of fix her hair or sort her outfit out before the photos start taking place. And I look at all the other family members and they literally look at me thinking, you're a bit close to that bride. However, because me and the bride and the groom have built up such a really good relationship, they know that my intention is that I'm just there to work, and I promise them that I will look after them, right?
You're there to serve them. Yeah, you're there to serve them.
Yeah, I'm there to serve them. So they know. So then why is it that, because this is the question actually, why is it that when we know why we are doing something and it's the right thing to do, why do we always think about the external stuff and then have building thoughts into our mind when actually we know why we're doing it, but then we start doubting ourselves, is this the right thing to do?
It's fascinating, right? But it's that internal battle between what is your actual intention, right? Because if your intention is flawed, then people may have a right to think that way, because if you act a certain way. But in this case, you're saying you're coming from a place of service, right? So it's that intention battle between what's your intention and people's perception. It's like me. It's funny you say that. It's like 95% of my coaching clients are all women. That's not kind of intentional that they're women. It's just that's how it's kind of, I don't know, like it's just that's how it is, right? But and I always make sure that if I'm meeting them, I meet them in a public place and all that, and obviously more for their safety and the perception as well. But it's just fascinating that what other people think, and I guess if you know that you're true to yourself, then you don't really care what other people think, right? In a nice respect, I'm saying that in a nice, respectful way. But their perception of society, and whether it's cultural or non-cultural, is always going to be there. It's always going to be there, because people just love to talk, right?
Yeah, we got some. So I think all cultures gossip. Yeah, it's not just. Yeah, definitely, all cultures gossip. Darren said you just end up with more sisters and bankrupt on Raksha Bandhan.
All right, yeah. We're referencing okay,
Natural
Rakhi.
reaction.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, it's true. I think it's one of those ones where we probably do need a follow-up session to the one that we had, and I think I'm not sure. I'd love to hear from the guy's perspective as well. Like, do you actually sit back and take a moment and pause and reflect and about the women in your life? Because sometimes it is easy to take people for granted, right? It's not intentional, but because they're always there, then they're every day for you. It's almost like it's like when you don't see someone for a long time, you give them that big loving hug, right? Or you get into a conversation or a catch-up conversation, right? And then it's like time flies. But then the people who are there around you, it's fascinating, right? We don't tend to do that. Or maybe we do. I don't know. I'd love to hear that. It's like, yeah, I think it's different for different people, right, Sagar?
Yeah, you're granted is definitely one word that came out right on our session. But I don't know. Do we do that being aware of it, or are we just so caught up in our own lives that we are not aware? We're not aware that we're doing it, but so we're not actually intentionally doing it. Unfortunately, if the other person feels like that, I feel that they should also just mention it and reach out to say, look, don't feel like you can take me for granted. And that's not in a negative way, but sometimes we are so caught up in our own lives and our own family and work and everything that that's not how we want someone to feel. However, like it all goes back to that communication, because don't assume they know. Don't assume that I'm hurting, so he should know, because I think this whole assumption thing, I don't, we everyone's busy in whatever they do. And if you think that they should know, I think that's the wrong way to think about it.
Yeah, not just busy, but I think what you hit the nail on the head there, where you said about communication is absolutely the foundation, right, and the fundamentals of any relationship. I'm not preaching or saying anything that people don't already know, but assumption is also a dangerous thing, right? Because there's a balance of, in the relationship, saying someone's assuming something, or someone's saying, well, you should know because we've been together for a year, or you kind of should know me by now, or 10 years, or whatever it is, or 20 years, or 50 years, whatever it is, right? And then you mentioned the story about, you know, I don't know if you can share it, but the story that you mentioned about the couple who got divorced at a later stage. So that was really interesting. That was fascinating. But it's just, it's, and then we talked about divorce rates, and we talked about whether they're higher or lower with arranged marriages based on love marriages, and it made the conversation went everywhere in a good way. And we could have talked for hours, but I think fundamentally it's personal to each and every individual, and it's what you want out of the relationship, whichever relationship it is, right? It could be mother son, mother daughter, sister, niece, your, you know, your own daughter, your girlfriend, your wife. And I think it's just important to ask that question, right? That do we show up for the women in our lives? And if we as men expect them to show up in our lives, it's kind of like a catch-22. Well, someone's got to take the first step, or someone's got to take the first initiative, right? So that's where the I guess where the conversation stemmed from in the private chat. And obviously that was with all men there, so it was very, the viewpoint was from a male's perspective. So but we would love if you watch this on the replay, or if there's any women right now watching it, just comment, and we just love to. I'm fascinated to love what they think, right, from their perspective as well. I'm pretty sure they have a perspective and an opinion on this as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I don't know how many women are on this.
And it's not easy to share on a live, right? Because we always get flooded with private messages for obvious reasons, because some things are quite sensitive.
Yeah, no, I definitely think, you know, when you're watching this on replay, whether you're watching it on Facebook or you're watching it on our page, or whether you're watching it on YouTube, you know, the comment sections are always open. You know, we do sort of just validate before we post it, if that's what you want. It would be nice to know from the women's perspective, definitely, because I think at the moment everyone that's commented are men except Prina, who of course is my other half. So, so I don't want to know your perspective on this, by the way. But yeah, no, I definitely, I think it would be nice to know what women think of what we've just, because again, we are saying this only because we can only assume, and as Mano just said, you know, assumption can become very toxic. In a, you know, and this is why sometimes, especially, well, myself as a man, if we can avoid the subject, what I used to do is, if it's a subject that is going to be very difficult to talk about, I'll just avoid it. And because I had the assumption, or I was assuming, that if I do talk about this, I'm going to put my viewpoint out there, and then it's just going to turn into a disagreement or an argument, and then we're just going to end this day very badly. So I've got two choices: either just not talk about it, or actually talk about it, but I've already built a story in my head that this is going to create a disagreement or an argument, which is why I don't do it. But now I say everything how it is, and whether people like it or not, because I'm saying it, because my intention is not to hurt them, but I just say it how it is. And if they don't like it, then I think they should just tell me, because I'm not going to then go up to them and say, are you okay? Because I meant, not, it's really hard, right? So where do you draw? I'm just trying to think now, where do you draw the line of, I don't know, because then that comes across arrogant. But then
I think it's different for each situation, isn't it? Because I sometimes build a narrative in my mind as well, right, based on a certain situation. And if I think, whether it's a colleague at work or whatever it is, right, in a personal relationship, if I feel that the energy expenditure and time and intention is not going to serve as a positive outcome, I tend to not waste my time and energy in that. And I tend to always, recently now anyway, last few years, tend to focus on the positive outcomes, if that makes sense. Now, the positive outcomes can be sharing what sometimes is just the truth, right? And then letting the chips fall wherever they fall. Or it could be picking your conversations or your battles and knowing your timing, right? That's such a personal choice depending on what the topic is, who you're talking to, and the context of your relationship, right? It's so it has to be unique. I don't think it's one thing for everything for
I
everyone.
just had a comment here. I think this was going back to if you know, if you were married or if you were with someone and you were with another girl, like as a friend. I think it's come from that because it's. I'm just going back to some of the comments. I don't think it's an issue as long as your intention is pure, then doesn't matter what anyone else says. Which, yeah,
And and that's a great comment. And that's my fundamental. I'm not sure who's shared that, but that's fundamentally what I believe. And then, because if you're governed by other people's perception all your life, you'll be governed by their narrative. And that's a dangerous thing as well, right? And we always talk about OPO, other people's opinions, not don't always matter. If it comes from a place of love and someone's giving you good constructive feedback, then that's a great thing. But if it's coming from a toxic place and you're always listening to other people's narrative, that's a dangerous thing. But it does come down to what is your intention. If your intention is pure, it it will come across that way, if that makes sense, right? To whoever you're talking to and people around. But if your intention is not, and your intention is to flirt, then that's pretty obvious as well, right? And it can come across that way. So it does come down to what your intention is.
yeah, no, definitely. I just something that just you just said. What was it? If other people's opinions, sorry, other opinion, it's completely, I've gone blank. Sorry, yeah, gone blank. It was about other people's opinion, where I think yeah, what was it? As when some years back, of course, other people's opinions did not matter to me. Well, that's what I thought, but clearly they did because I implemented them in my life.
Mm, mm,
Right. And again, that's that women thing, where I always thought, nah, I know what I'm doing. So I completely fobbed it off, saying, look, whatever your opinions are, it doesn't really matter to me. But clearly I said that in that temporary moment, but it did stick with me because I would have never implemented half the. So you may think it doesn't matter at that stage, but when you then again strip back to why they are saying something instead of just reacting, you tend to realize that it is coming from love. But yeah, that's cool.
definitely, and it does come back to that. Sometimes we don't process it as it's coming from a place of love, and that could be our own stubbornness or ego, whatever you want to call it. But if we deem at our core that it's coming from a place of love and it's coming from a place of good intention, then surely that's a good thing, and it's up to us as a personal choice what we do with that, right? Because that person's expending time and energy sharing their opinion, and if it is coming from a place of love and good, and a good place of growth and wanting you to develop or protecting you from doing harm to yourself, not just physically but also mentally or your well-being as well, then that's a blessing, right? We're grateful to have those people around us, and if we don't recognize it, that's our kind of blind spot, right?
So how many people, it'll be nice to know in the comments here. So how many people do you think, Manoj, that, like I just mentioned, my previous partner would have given me some growth, guidance, whatever. And at that moment, I fobbed it off and said, your opinions don't matter because I know what I'm doing is right. However, years down the line, stripped everything back and realized that some of the opinions that she had actually created growth within me and my business and everything else that I do. But how many people do you think have understood that, whether it's 5 years down the line, and actually have reached out? It doesn't have to be a partner, a sister, or whatever, mother, right? How many people do you think have actually reached out, even if it is 5 years down the line, to actually maybe reconnect if they lost connection and just say, look, actually, thank you so much? Or do we just not say that because
It's, yeah, it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question. And I think the context of the question depends um,
the relationship, right?
on the relationship. And what you're referring to, I think right now is at that time you didn't recognize it. And right now you're grateful for it because it's led to your individual personal growth. And then you're also, I'm just extracting it because you know I do this, right, bro, with you. And then you're mentioning the fact that if you say it from a place of good intentions and because you're grateful, would it even be received in that way? Or is it the right thing to do? And the right thing is only what's right in your mind, right? Not what's right in my mind, because it's one of those things where, back to your question, probably a low percentage, I'd bet, right, for people. But I think, see, every person who we may not have had a good relationship with in our lives, right? And in this context, we're talking about the women in our lives, whether it's good or bad, has served us a purpose, right, in our growth and in our journey. And whether we choose to reflect back on it and learn from it, that's a personal choice, right? So whether it's from a place of pain, and we've learned from that relationship, or whether it's a place of love and we've learned from it and we've not taken it for granted and we're absolutely grateful in the present moment, for example, and you let that other person know, I think that's really important, to do that. And I don't think we do that bit enough. Certainly I don't do that enough. So it's a conscious thing that I've taken away from today's talk. But yeah, that's just my take on it.
Wow, let me just see if there's any more. No, we haven't got any more comments, but yeah, as Manoj mentioned earlier, as we're about to wrap up, just please do comment on the live, whether it's on Facebook, on the replay, whether it's on YouTube. We do look through every single comment. We also validate them as well, because, you know, this is not, we haven't done Mindful Men's Club in terms of guys hating or you know, having any negative energy, but we try and help wherever we can. So we do validate all the comments that come through to the Mindful Men's Club Facebook page. However, the comment section on the replays and the lives and the YouTube comment section is always open. And like I always say every 2 weeks, is, you know, just, yeah, share, guys, because this is we realize that without knowing, we are actually helping so many. So yeah, Manoj, any words? Of course, yeah, we want to appreciate Mental Wealth as well, our sister company, but yeah, Manoj, I'll let you do that.
Yeah, we always do a shout out. So thanks, Saga. So we always do a shout out to our two sister groups. So one is Reroute, that's for women who are 18 to 35. And Reroute is part of Mind, which is a registered charity, as you guys all know, and also Mental Wealth, which is for women 18 and I think there's any upper limit and above. So massive shout out to them. Go check them out on Instagram and Facebook. And also just to all the women out there, massive shout out to you guys. And guys, don't forget, tomorrow it's Mother's Day, so get your Mother's Day gifts, or doesn't have to be a gift, just show your appreciation, or whatever it is, or flowers, or whatever your love language is, or whatever the mother receives it as in terms of you know, appreciation. I think don't forget your gifts. Or I jested in my private chat that if I forget that, my kind of food menu changes for the week. And I'm kidding. If Nita's watching this, I'm kidding. But on that note, I'm going to get in trouble now. I better stop talking. Have a super blessed weekend. Don't forget to put hashtag replay and then comment if you watch it on replay. Check out our YouTube channel. You never know where you might help save another person's life. Just to share, sorry, I just flicked my card in my face there. Just to share something on a slightly deeper level. One guy, I can't mention his name because he asked me not to mention his name, sent me a really long post, private messaged me on Facebook, and that's led to our one of our future topics, which is called unpacking depression, because he's on some serious medication. I don't want to go into it too much on here, but we'll save that for the talk. But I won't mention him, but he's kindly asked me that if you can use this somehow to help somebody else who's going through depression. So all of our topics aren't just a flippant scribble on a notepad. They come from a catalyst of someone's personal story or share. So if you've got any topics, please, please, please share them with us. Comment on the chat, private message us, or message us on Facebook or Instagram or whatever you want, or just reach out to us and keep sharing, because they're not our topics, they're your topics. And some of the topics suggested are also from women as well. So we really, really want to hear from your perspective. Even though the chat is for men only, we do bring that in, right? So I just wanted to share that. But yeah, on that note, have an amazing, blessed weekend. And Sagar, we need to link up soon, right? Now the rules are being a bit relaxed.
Definitely.
Safety in mind and all that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Guys, thank you so much. And yeah, love always. So we'll keep you updated with our next topics as well on Facebook. Thank you.
Definitely. Have a blessed weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.
Later. Bye-bye.